Hello, my name is Sarah Montpleasure, and I will be presenting my research with Dr. James Nchwaya on chemical education textbooks. We will specifically be looking at how the textbooks attempt to make abstract connections real for students. Chemistry can be a difficult subject to understand due to the abstract concepts new learners come across. This leads students to believe success in chemistry comes from rote memorization of facts with little focus or emphasis on connections to their own lives. Because of this, textbooks are a critical resource for both teaching and learning science topics. They help organize the content for students to better understand while supplying the curriculum base for educators to utilize. This makes textbook selection an important component in creating connections between content and relevance beyond memorization. This study explored how textbooks help build relevance by looking at the content found within special connection sections in each of the chapters. During the study, we focused on the following research questions. To what extent do general chemistry textbooks connect content to the real-world applications? And what real-life applications or categories do the textbooks focus on? These questions were broad enough to encompass all of the textbooks that were evaluated while still allowing for further narrowing during the coding and analysis of each chapter. Our methodology was broken down into two sections, textbook selection and coding and analysis. The methods involved during the textbook selection process was selecting a convenient sample of 8 textbooks to analyze. Each chapter was then read for special connections that have a connection beyond the textbook. These sections were found in various locations throughout the chapter and varied in length between all of the textbooks. Each section was then analyzed for specific content within the connection. For the coding portion of the research, 2 textbooks were analyzed to create the coding scheme with a 94% inter-rater agreement on the codes. For connections that had tricky applications, discussions via in-person meetings and Zoom were used to settle on the codes. After that was completed, 2 researchers then coded the rest of the general chemistry textbooks and documented content in a shared spreadsheet. The textbooks selected for this study are listed below. On to the results. Answering our first question was a matter of compiling information from all connections in all 8 textbooks. We then listed total connections and the most relevant connections within the textbooks, which included environmental, industrial, health, content extension, history and the nature of science, connections to other disciplines, and technology. These categories were found in most of the textbooks, with some of the shorter textbooks missing a few of the connections. It is also important to note that all textbooks had nearly the same layout of 22 to 24 chapters in the same order, but had a large difference in total connections within each book. This can be seen with the Gilbert book only having 11 total connections for the 24 chapters present, with the Kotz book having a total of 142 connections for 24 chapters. We then narrowed our question to look on what applications and categories the textbooks tend to focus on within the special connections, which we then broke into different sections themselves. The first we looked at was the connection to other disciplines, which we have narrowed into exact disciplines that were mentioned within the connections. The text was able to relate to chemistry concepts to biology, pharmacy, and geology the most frequently, with some connections being made in physics, ecology, and physiology. Within the disciplines, we noted concepts that were most frequently being mentioned in each. Biology tended to focus on DNA, fission, and ATP. Physics focused on voltage and electrical currents. Geology focused on plate tectonics and gemstones. Ecology focused on the carbon and nitrogen cycles, and pharmacy related to chemical creation of popular pharmaceuticals. The physiology category goes into more detail in a later slide. The next section we looked at was the connections to the environment, which were narrowed into the atmosphere, the greenhouse effect, the ozone layer, acid rain, water, elements, and green chemistry. These categories were easier to code as they directly stated what the special connections were. For example, the acid rain category involved connections that directly mentioned acid rain and its effects. The atmosphere talked about specific layers of the atmosphere and troposphere, and green chemistry specifically talked about the new concept of green chemistry. The challenging one in this section was the water category because it involved various topics such as the Flint water crisis, ocean acidification, hard water, and chlorinated water. The health connections included physiology, medicines, diseases, and technology. Within the physiology category, we coded for things such as hemoglobin, carcinogens, thyroids, and buffers. The medicine section focused more on concepts rather than specific medicines such as nuclear therapy, IV solutions, and antacids with the creation of the solutions and antacids. The disease category was the longest and primarily focused on ailments caused by elements, such as anemia or iron deficiency, goiter or iodine deficiency, tin disease, and oxygen-related issues such as hypoxia and the bends. The technology section was created for mentions of PET scans, EKGs, and MRI technologies within the field. The next connection we looked at was the industrial connection, which we focused on water purification processes, fuel production, military weapon production, disinfectants, and vehicle uses. These sections were straightforward as well, with the most ambiguous being vehicle uses, which included blimps and electric cars. The fuel production category mostly focused on the difference between fossil fuels, biofuels, and different alternatives for green fuels. The final section we narrowed for this study was the technology applications. These were the most difficult to code as every textbook had widely different technology applications, with few that overlapped. We were able to broadly categorize them into batteries, medical technology, femtochemistry, which was the only connection that directly labeled the same across the 3 textbooks, and lasers. The batteries included lithium-ion batteries and mentions of fuel cells. The medical technology is the same as in the health connections with MRIs, EKGs, and PET scans. And the lasers included laser pointers, actual lasers, and display technologies. After completing our research of what special connections we found within the textbooks, we came up with some future research questions that could use our information in the help of answering them. We looked at to what extent do instructors reference the special sections in the textbooks, and to what extent do the students reference or utilize the special sections in the textbooks. Since we noted that every textbook on the list was using special connections, it would be interesting to see if students and teachers are actually using them, or if they are still primarily focusing on the content within the textbooks. Within the special connections, we would like to know if the special sections have any accompanying assessments or questions within them, and also if there are any representations used within the connections, or what kind of representations are being used. We had noted in our spreadsheets in a simple yes/no format if any questions were asked within the sections or if there were any pictures present, but further analysis has not yet been completed.